All eyes on Rafah. That is the hashtag that has been going around, and that is because of what has been going on. Of course, it is not something that just happened yesterday, but yesterday there was an incident that I think just showed, that just demonstrated the depravity and the hypocrisy, the double standards of all the international powers, and that's what I just wanted to talk about. But full disclosure, if you're looking for something really profound, something amazing, I don't think I will be able to say it, because this is just something more that would resemble more of a rant and some ramblings, some musings. If you are looking for something more sophisticated, I would direct you to my interview with Dr. Ang Swee Chai, or which I think is the best I've ever done, and with Hanan, the Palestinian lawyer, or with Karim Ali from the Gaza Sunbirds. But I wanted to talk about a few things today. So one is the situation in Rafah itself and what it tells us. Secondly, how the media has covered it and the awful nature of media coverage. The third would be the role of international institutions and where do we go. Fourth is there are two major elections coming up in the US and the UK, and what happens with that. And the fifth one is what can we do as Singaporeans, right? I hope to end by 30 minutes, so because I have something on. So let's begin. So the situation in Rafah, as you probably would be aware, we have what happened is Israel had designated a place as a safe area, I think in East Rafah. I mean, as usual, they will always designate this and then they move the goalposts. And there were bombings and there were actual beheaded babies. There are videos of beheaded babies, not propaganda, not just statements, and then people claiming they saw that but never saw that, because those didn't exist on the 7th October, the beheaded babies. Those videos didn't exist, but there are actual videos of babies having their heads cut off or decapitated, right, from the bombings or from the burnings, the subsequent burnings after the bombings. And initially, the IDF statement was that there were two Hamas fighters. And this, first of all, even if it was true, two Hamas fighters and you bombed the entire area, over 40 people died or more. And secondly, now, does it mean anything anymore if Israel calls somebody Hamas? Like everybody they disagree with, they would say, oh, this is just Hamas sympathizer, whatever it is. Right? But even then, even if you were to take them on their word, subsequently, Netanyahu said that was a mistake, a tragic mistake. Now, if it is a tragic mistake, and we have seen so many of these tragic mistakes, who's going to pay for these mistakes? This is not a mistake you make in an exam. This is not a mistake you make in a football match, you pass the ball wrong. This is a mistake that has cost dozens, hundreds, thousands of lives. And you are just going to say, oh, it was a mistake. So where is the accountability? And I think the main thing is that there is nothing that they say that we should believe anymore. There is nothing, right? Well, we shouldn't take it anything that they say, we shouldn't take it seriously. There have been verifiable lies that have been told one after another in this episode. So I don't know why we pretend like they are honest actors. They can check themselves. What? Just because they throw around the term the only democracy in the Middle East, that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean anything, right? So while this is going on, the parliament just passed, the Knesset just allowed, the Israeli parliament allowed more building of settlements. So this is the other thing that I wanted to say. And there will be, because now it's so in your face that even the most ardent of Israeli supporters would find it hard to defend what's going on. And you will see them shifting. Believe me, you will see this, right? You will see slowly, right? They will say, oh, Netanyahu is the problem. So let's get rid of Netanyahu. But what I would say is two things. One is Israeli occupation of Palestine started way before Netanyahu. Secondly, Netanyahu is not a rando. He's not like a person, an uncle at the coffee shop. He is the Prime Minister. And a lot of what he does is supported by the Knesset and the Parliament as well. So you cannot just dismiss this as a one-person problem rather than an institutional, a deep ideological problem. So that is what I think the more liberal Zionists would do, and I think we need to caution against that. So that's the first thing. And second thing, of course, all of them are related. Second is about the media. I think the media has been really shameful. I want to be fair. Also, I think I have seen movements in the New York Times and the Washington Post. I think we have seen the Washington Post coverage has been getting better. So over the past few days, it has been getting better. But overall, the media has still been awful. MSNBC, CNN, when Dana Bash did that piece about student peaceful protest, saying that this was like the 1930s in Germany. I mean, shameful. How does she still have a job? Joe Scarborough from MSNBC, how does he still have a job? It's amazing. I mean, this is the media. These are the people who say that Trump was a present danger to media freedom, and Trump is the one who's making an enemy of the media, saying it's fake news and so on. But you are fake news. I mean, Trump himself is full of fake news, but so is the mainstream media in the state, right? And I really wanted to say to our media in Singapore, stop using the term Israel-Hamas war. Stop. Because it's not the Israel-Hamas war. It's the Israel-Palestinian. If you want to call it war, call it Israel-Palestine war. Or it should be Israel-Palestine conflict, because there is no standing army on the side of the Palestinians. But fine, if you want to call it war, just call it Israel-Palestine war. I think it's Israel-Palestine conflict. That should be the proper term, because the West Bank is still being occupied. Settlements are increased, and you can refer to the United Nations report. They have documented that there have been deaths and captures of civilians in the West Bank, where Hamas does not rule. Right? So there is no Hamas to pin the blame on. So I think our media, and I think Audrey, Sarah, and I, and Cindy, we have written about this on our Instagram, where we said we should stop referring this. I think this is something that we should continue to push for. Like, stop using the term Israel-Hamas. The proper term is Israel-Palestine. Right? And also, it's not just about West Bank and Gaza. That is an important part. But when you use Israel-Hamas, right, what you are trying to do is, in your mind already, right, you are already saying, oh, there's going to be collateral, because the targets are Hamas, right? The target. So there's two Hamas fighters. So yeah, there's going to be collateral. So indirectly, what you may be doing is minimizing the death of Palestinian civilians. Right? So that's the second thing. Now, the third, of course, international institutions. And there are two major international institutions in this regard. One is the International Criminal Court, and the other is the International Court of Justice. So the International Criminal Court is slightly different from the International Court of Justice. So the ICC, International Criminal Court, so that Israel and US are not signatories. Well, they were, but they sort of pulled out of the Rome Statutes. So there's a debate, right? Whether they have jurisdiction, whether the ICC prosecutor can actually issue that. So let's say the US is right. I don't think they are, but that's a legal question. Let's say that there is no jurisdiction, right? But even if they issue arrest warrants, then that could still affect Netanyahu's visits to countries which are signatories to, which do abide by the Rome Statute. So that's the International Criminal Court. So we have to see what happens with that. Of course, it's unlikely that countries would actually be arresting Netanyahu, because first of all, he wouldn't be visiting those countries to begin with, right? The countries that would enforce it. So that's the thing about the enforceability. But I think even symbolically, it means something. Now, the ICC report, I would say it's not unproblematic. It's not unproblematic as much as we celebrate it. I think the ICC report, the chief prosecutor said that, he was investigating the sexual assault allegations on 7 October, and I think he made the assessment that it's credible and so on. So I'm thinking, I thought that was debunked. I thought that was debunked by multiple sources. Even the New York Times article, right, the Intercept did a takedown of it and so on. But okay, if the ICC wants to investigate that, that's fine. It seems they have reached a conclusion. So I'm not saying that the report itself is perfect, but I think it's a huge step in the right direction. It is definitely something positive if there is. If the warrant is eventually issued for the arrest of Netanyahu and Hamas leaders. So the ICJ is a court which has, well, it's supposed to have more bite because the ICJ is the UN's court. Right? So all the UN members are bounded by it. So technically, the UN Security Council, so the permanent 5 plus the 10 rotating members, technically, they can actually enforce the ruling of the ICJ if they wanted to. Of course, with the US veto, and as long as US is Israel, that's not going to happen. But technically, they could, right? So the ICJ actually has more bite. The issue, I think, for international institutions, right, and this is where now you see the house of cards crumbling, right? The pretenses about rule of law and democracy, respecting international institutions, is all out of the window. It's down in the drain already. Because the US and the Western powers can make all of these grandiose claims, but when push comes to shove, they are not going to abide by it. And that means they never cared about rule of law. They just cared about their own interests, right? Now, what is going to happen? What is going to happen is that people have seen through this. People are not stupid. And what is going to happen? A lot of the global South will be looking for different global powers, right? And a lot of the global South would probably gravitate towards China. I mean, this is one of the things that I see coming out of this entire episode. And can you blame them? Can you blame them? I'm not saying that China is a passive actor who's acting only in the interest of the global South. No. Big powers will behave as big powers are. So it's not going to be that different. China is going to act in its own interest. But from the perspective of the global South countries, like if the US is going to ignore the institutions that it claims to have supported all this while, then screw you. Why should they continue to have the UN as a patron? Why they might as well look for other alternatives. Not that the US will suddenly not be relevant. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that respect that was given to the US, whether it's actual or whether it's by virtue of the US's power, would decrease over time, and it has decreased over time. And I think that's really important for us whenever we are talking to US politicians, people who claim, they believe in democracy. We need to point this out over and over again, whether online, whether in person, if we do interact with such people, right? Point it out, because there's no defense for it. Don't let them get away with things. Like now, I give you an example, right? Now, there is a rewriting of history, like, because people hate George Bush, people hate Donald Trump so much. They say, George W. Bush was a nice guy. Right? And George W. Bush invaded Iraq illegally. Now, he claimed there were weapons of mass destruction. And subsequently, it was to spread democracy. After this, it was clear that there was no weapons of mass destruction. Whenever people say that, and now it's almost as if it's conventional wisdom, they actually invaded to spread democracy. No, they invaded because they said there were weapons of mass destruction. And we need to point that out. Whenever people say, to spread democracy, no, you don't care about democracy. You support so many authoritarian leaders, so many dictators in the Muslim world and in the global South. And that has always been part of your foreign policy, as long as they are nice to you, as long as they support your interests. Right? So there are many authoritarian countries that are supported by the Western governments. Right? So this bull about supporting democracy and human rights, come on, it was never really true. But I think now it is so apparently false, such that I think international, and if Netanyahu can say, whatever happens, right, we are going to ignore the ruling of the ICC or ICJ, and the US cannot do anything. What does that tell us about international institutions? And we need to point this out every opportunity we get, right? Which brings me to my fourth point, which is the US and UK elections. They are coming up. And as I said before, I've said many times before, the battle for Palestinian liberation won't even be won in Palestine. It'll be won, and this is what Professor Rashid Khalidi said, and this will be won in the Western world, in the heart of the Western civilization, right? In America and in UK. And now there is an opportunity for people in America and the UK to actually really voice their discontent, right? Because ultimately the language politicians understand the most is the vote. And I think an American who is really interested, who is concerned about what's happening in Gaza cannot vote for Joe Biden. Now, of course, when you do not vote for Joe Biden, that probably means that even if you do not vote for Trump, that increases the chances of Donald Trump winning. And Donald Trump is not going to be better on Palestine. He's not. He's going to be either the same or worse, right? Can you go any worse from this, from supporting genocide? Well, as Israel has shown us over the past few days, it can get worse. It can always get worse, right? So probably Donald Trump is going to be a bit worse than Joe Biden on this. But that's not the point. The point of not giving Joe Biden the vote is to show him that if you think we are going to vote for you no matter what, that's not going to happen. And if people still vote for him, that means, right, there is no line for them, especially minorities. There is no red line for them in supporting the Democrats. The Democrats can do anything, including supporting a plausible genocide, and get away with it. And I think for every single voter in the world, wherever you are, the moment you support a party or the moment you pledge your vote to a party unconditionally, you have lost your relevance. You must never, I think, a voter should never ever pledge their vote unconditionally to any politician or party. The moment you do that, you become irrelevant. And I hope that's what minorities, that's what people who care about Palestine do in America, and that's what they do in UK as well. So Rishi Sunak is really awful and the Conservatives, the Tories are really awful when it comes to Palestine. Not only Palestine, they are also trying to clamp down on peaceful demonstrations in their own country. So it's not just that. So it's not just Palestine, but it's also domestic politics. They are really bad. But unfortunately, the Labour Party is not exactly the greatest when it comes to Palestine as well. Keir Starmer is pretty bad on Palestine as well. And initially, in the initial days, he was even saying that he tried to walk it back unsuccessfully, but Israel could basically turn off water in Gaza, and that was fair game. And the Labour Party is going to be pretty bad. In the UK, you have alternatives at least, right? You have George Galloway's party now, you have the Green Party, and so on. So I foresee the Conservatives getting a thrashing, getting trounced. So the ideal situation is the Labour Party as well doesn't win that many seats. Ultimately, one of them has to form government unless a miracle happens. But hopefully it's through a very, very slim majority or a coalition government. Basically, the point is to show that, look, you cannot get away with doing whatever you are doing, right? So just because I'm minority doesn't mean I'm going to vote Labour. Just because I care about Palestine doesn't mean I'm going to vote. I am willing to vote for the other parties. I'm willing to not even vote for you. Right? I'm willing to spoil my vote if that is what it takes for me to be heard. So I think that is what is going to happen, and I think we should watch that space. Even if we are not from there, we should watch that space, because that will really determine a lot of what will go on in the Middle East, in Palestine, and in the rest of the world as well. So, sorry, there is a comment by Sarah, I think I saw it earlier. Oh, so this language contributes to the dehumanization of Palestinians. Indeed, the language of the media contributes to the dehumanization of the Palestinians, right? So, okay, so final point, what can we do? And I would say there are three things I would say roughly. So one is for us who are really concerned about it, and I include myself in this, I'm advising myself as well, for us who are concerned about it, and we feel a lot of emotions, right? A lot of anger and sadness and rage and frustration and disappointment and so on. So what we need to do is, as difficult as it is, we should not make it about ourselves. We should center the Palestinians and the Palestinian experience in all our postings. Right? So no matter how bad we feel and so on, it's very easy to go down, oh, as a mother, whatever it is, right? As a father, as a son, right? So I think it's important for us to center the Palestinians around whatever we post and around our advocacy and our activism. Right? So that's important. And it's important for two reasons, I think. One is spiritually, we should never make things about ourselves. But secondly, if we center ourselves and our own emotions around it, right, it may be crippling and you may end up, oh, what is the point of doing something? And I go back to what Dr. Aung Suu Kyi said, right? If you want to feel good about yourself, do something for the Palestinians, right? Don't feel sorry for yourself. Go, and the Palestinians don't give up. Despair is not an option for them, so we shouldn't despair. So that's the first thing. The second thing, as I said, the US and UK elections are extremely important. So what I would do, and I think it's so important, comment on the US politicians, UK politicians, US media, UK media. Comment, leave a comment. It's not that hard. Just leave a comment, something. Just make sure that even though you are not from there, just add to the comments, the pro-Palestine comments, the pro-Palestinian comments on these politicians' Instagram pages and so on the media pages. Call them out. Make sure that there is a critical mass of comments on every post. Don't let, even if it's nothing to do with it, right? People like Nancy Pelosi, they post about something else, bring in Palestine, right? People like Joe Biden, they post, I don't know about Turkeys or whatever it is. Post a comment. Make sure that there is a pro-Palestinian presence on their comments, right? So make them, yes, Leanne said, it's important to make the oppressors, aggressors, those are complicit, uncomfortable, right? So that's what I would say. And the third one's okay. Then what do we do? What do we do in Singapore, right? So I think there are a few things that I wanted to say on this. Firstly, in all of my years in observing this issue, right, and writing about it, in all of the years, I have never seen, maybe the government will take issue with my characterization, but I have never seen this significant of a leftward shift, if you can call it, pro-Palestinian shift, right? And I'll give you a few examples, right? A few examples. So one is, I'll get to, I'm talking about Singaporean politicians. So one is the Gaza airdrop, the food drop. That's the first one. The second one, Minister Shanmugam calling out the Israeli embassy. That's not insignificant. These two are not insignificant. The third one would be the Gaza monologues, where it was the first time that a public event, even though it was closed door, it was supported and endorsed by the government. Of course, a lot of people have said, and I think it's not wrong, that was a co-optation attempt. But the fact that the government thought they needed to co-opt it shows that they are recognizing that ground sentiments are shifting on it. And of course, our foreign minister, Vivian Balakrishnan, telling Netanyahu to his face that he had gone too far. And I think that's significant. Right? For a small country, I think that's significant. Now, you can argue that it's not enough. Everything that has been done is not enough. That's fine. But I don't think you can say there has not been a shift. And those shifts, I think are significant, and I definitely welcome. I'm on board with that shift, right? Now, there are some people who would go, and I think some of the commenters, they say, oh, let's go one step further, right? Cut off all ties with Israel. Now, and I think it's okay to have those discussions. It's okay to have groups who are championing that. I think that's fine. I personally do not, because for me, like, consistency is important to me, and if I were to do that based on human rights violations by Israel, then what other countries should I advocate that for? And there are some countries that I still want the visa to go to. In the name of consistency, are we gonna have that? So I think that's for the people who are calling for the breaking of ties. I think that's something to consider, and I think that's fine if you are doing that. And the third is something I wanted to say. I think most people who are interested in this issue want to be an activist, or they want to advocate for this issue. Maybe they don't want to be an activist, quote unquote, right? But they want to advocate for this issue through legal means. Now, there are some people who are more gung-ho and they want to challenge the laws and so on, and that's up to you. That's not me. I also want to do things legally, right? Like many others. So, and within this framework, I think there are many things that we can do. One is continue to put the issue on the table. I think you can continue to write to the media. You can write to your MPs as much as possible, as in just to show them that you really care about this issue. I think within the legal framework, there are a lot of things that you can do. I just wanted to say that it's important to point out the shifts that the government has done for two reasons. One is to acknowledge these shifts, right? And because that's what you want, a government to react. And somebody said to me, the government is just doing this. That person acknowledged the shift, but the government is just doing this for the votes and for the elections. And I said, so what? That's what you want governments to do. You want governments to react to public sentiment, right? So that's one. And the second thing is also it gives us hope, right? So that your activism, the things that we do, it's not in vain. There are tangible outcomes. Now, of course, this is not a government of radical change. This is a government of gradual change on all issues, so including this one. So that's why you can say it's glacial shifts, but I think it's discernible and it's significant even though it's glacial. So I don't think that's something that we should downplay. So that's basically what I wanted to talk about today. If anybody has any comments or any final questions, and we can just take them. Otherwise, tomorrow I will be having a session. I will be having a session with Gilbert from Love Aid Singapore, and we'll be discussing this. Thank you. Yes, we don't make it about ourselves. We keep going. The shifts happen with a strong show of people sentiment. Yes, exactly. So if we show the government this, the basic rule of economics and politics, right? If there is no demand, there is no supply. In fact, you can say if there's no demand, why should there be supply, right? Why should there be supply, right? So that is the case. Now, so there is a question. Consistency would be if they did the same to Israel that they did to Russia. Now, that's a good point, but even for Russia, ties were not cut off. It was only sanctions in particular spheres, right? And I think, again, that's another thing that can be discussed. As in, not can be discussed, is discussed already. But even with Russia, even the strong stand taken against Russia, ties are not cut, right? And the Russian embassy still gets to post whatever it wants. So that's something that we need to acknowledge. Also, I think I didn't talk about the United Nations vote that Singapore has been at least at 2 to 3 votes, including the one a couple of weeks ago where it acknowledged or not recognized Palestine. I think I have to be careful about the phrasing, but supported Palestinian statehood. Would it be fair to say that the government need the people's backing in order to effect change? Of course. I think if this is a smart government, okay, so if majority of Singaporeans go one way, then the government will go there as well. So I think a lot of effort need to be put into convincing people as well. I think then people say, why do I need to convince? Is it my responsibility? It's not your responsibility, but if you want change, then you have to convince people. You have to get people on board, right? So of course, I think that's important. Okay, so there is a comment here. It's in this question. why do you always bring the West Bank in when you discuss this? Leave the West Bank out of this. Well, with all due respect to this commenter, I'm not the one who's supposed to leave the West Bank. Israel is the one who's supposed to leave the West Bank. Right? There is an illegal occupation there. There is an illegal occupation by international law. So I don't think the commenter is right in saying that I should leave the West Bank. Israel should leave the West Bank, right? So and why do I bring the West Bank in? Because that shows that this is not about Hamas, or this is not solely about Hamas, right? The occupation has existed prior to that. The occupation still exists in the West Bank. So we must not mistake the effect for the cause, right? So that's what I wanted to say. Okay, if there's nothing else, I need to get back to work. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.